Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining today to hear a little bit more about what we're doing with the SharePoint mobile app and all of the things that it enables you to do. We're going to go for about an hour, and we'll have just a couple of slides to set up a little context, a lot of demo, and certainly time for questions. I saw a few came in via Twitter. You're more than welcome to ask them here if you're on the call within Skype. Or via Twitter. I'll pull that up about 10 to 15 minutes towards the end and just see what else other people have asked out there. If you just use the hashtag SPMobile, I'll see those and we'll take any questions and hopefully get through all of it. I think we've got plenty of time. And again, I thank you for your time. So just to reiterate, this is a session focused on the SharePoint mobile app end-to-end, and really focused on just showing you a lot of things from a demo perspective and walking you through really the entire app with just a little bit of context up front. So with that, we'll get started. When you think of the SharePoint space, you think of PowerPoint quitting on you, right in the middle. See if we can get right back to where we were. So with the SharePoint mobile app, our intent, and certainly anybody's intent when you've got your device connecting to your corporate network, looking for information, looking for people, is that you're trying to stay productive while you're on the go, whether you're at a coffee shop, on a regular internet connection, whether you're within the corporate firewall and you just happen to be sitting in another building in a meeting and you didn't bring your PC or your Mac, or you're just traveling and you decided that you were going to plump down a little bit of cash and have some good Wi-Fi from here to Borneo, I hope, or maybe from here to Singapore. So you've got a little while and you want to make sure to stay connected. You want to be alerted of what's going on and what's important, and certainly you want to be able to access all your information. So if you didn't know until today, we have a SharePoint mobile app, and we have a mobile app across all of the operating systems. So we have a SharePoint mobile app for iOS, we've got a SharePoint mobile app for Android, and a SharePoint mobile app for the Windows 10 mobile platform. And really across all of them you can do a number of things. And again, you'll be seeing all of this from a demo perspective. But just to give you a sense of the intent is certainly to be able to access all of your SharePoint sites. And if you sign into both on-premises and online, of course you'd be able to access your sites across from a hybrid perspective. With SharePoint Online and Office 365, we've introduced the ability to create news. So if you have a news article that you create, you can do that on the go. If other people have created news in team sites, in communication sites, and early part of next year, maybe potentially at the level of the hub site, you'll be able to consume that news. And so consuming news through the SharePoint mobile app is the best experience for consuming a page or a news article that was created in the modern way. Everything reflows, looks really beautiful. We maintain the interactivity. So if people are creating news around you, or you need to create news on the go, you'll be able to do that both from a reading perspective and a creation perspective. Of course, tantamount to just keeping connected is sometimes looking for that right site, that right document, that right person, and be able to find them, review the content, connect with the person, or even share the content or something like a news article, and to be able to further that along for other people that might be asking for it, or in an email you may just want to provide a link and you can easily get to your content, share it with others, consume it, and again get back to your day. We've just released an update for Android and iOS that brings the ability to get notified, and these come as regular device notifications, and they of course will be triggered when somebody publishes news that you're closely related to. That could be because you're active in a site and that news was published in that site, or you're working closely with somebody and the Microsoft Graph lets us know from a system perspective that that person's news is relevant to you and of interest to you. So that would come as an alert when they publish news into the system. And then the other thing that we announced and really have released within the last few weeks since Ignite is what we call the Me tab, and the ability to save for later. And that's the primary graphic you see within the phone on the slide. And so this is the way to get back to your content. There's a recent pivot. This is also a way to see the content that you've saved to read for later. That's an easy action to do, and you'll see that list once you've marked something saved for later. And it's also a great place to see your profile and potentially do actions there to see a further list of things that are relevant to you. So with that as an overview, I have one more slide to set a little context, and then we'll jump out of PowerPoint and go right into the SharePoint mobile app. So if you think about what SharePoint contributes to the overall productivity space, when you are a member of Office 365 or you're leveraging SharePoint on premises or a combination of the two, SharePoint is really a component that will help build your intranet. We provide, through the SharePoint offerings, the various site capabilities, document libraries, lists, and certainly with the mobile app and its companion through the web, which is what we call the SharePoint Home, you'll have access across all of your sites, no matter what site type, whether it's a team site, a communication site. In the early part of next year, when we release hub sites, of course, you'll be able to access those via mobile. And anything that happens within those sites, starting with the look and feel, so your themes will carry through, your site designs, which is really what dictates the layout and the different web parts that you use. And you can use the out-of-box themes and designs. You can use custom themes starting today, and soon you'll be able to build your own custom designs. And how that all flows through into the SharePoint mobile app is pretty important. So I'll primarily demo in the SharePoint mobile app, but I'll show just a little bit towards the end what some of those sites look like on the web, so you can see how the technology and the way that the engineering team is making it so that it's a really a great experience on mobile, and of course it's a great experience on web, and they are not the same. We are not reflowing HTML. We're doing a lot natively across these different site types, web parts, the layouts. But of course you're going to do more than just out of box. There may be a custom portal that you've built or will continue to build, and we of course support that. If we can't load it natively, we will render it in HTML, so there may be a little pinch and zoom to an existing team site, an on-premises team site, or something like a custom portal. And it revolves around what you do with your business applications. A lot of what happens in a team site from a business application perspective is what's going on in the list and the forms that you created, and we want to give you good access to that. A lot of what the app is driven by is due to the Microsoft Graph, which gives us the ability to intelligently roll up and provide visibility into things that are most relevant to you. But like any other good intranet, in terms of some basics that are a priority, is that ability to not only collaborate and not only promote and broadcast, but actually engage with your audience so that it's a two-way street, so that if people come across information, they can engage on that. If that's as simple as liking a news article or page, if that is something as simple as commenting, or getting into some things like sharing and further engagement. So with the building blocks of the internet, we see the SharePoint mobile app as a great entry point when you're on your device. That could be iPhone, iPad, it could be a Windows Surface, a Windows Phone, it could be an Android phone, Android tablet. All of those are supported with the three major SharePoint apps that we offer. So with that as a little bit of context, let me jump out of this PowerPoint and go to the mobile app, SharePoint mobile app. So one of the first things that you land on when you go to the SharePoint mobile app for the first time, and I'm going to show you towards the end a little bit about what it looks like to sign into the mobile app and some of the options that you have there. But once you load in and you sign in with either of your on-premises credentials, your SharePoint Online Office 365 credentials, or a combination of the two, you'll start to see a few things. So what you see here is the Sites tab, and bread and butter, certainly for those of you that know SharePoint, bread and butter is certainly the sites that you create, the sites that you're active in, the sites that you're invited to. And we've got a couple of pivots these days in terms of sites that you frequent. So if we detect you have been to a site, or the service detects that that site is active and you've been active in it, it'll put it into your frequent pivot here. So it's not just a list of recent, it's actually a little bit more polished around what's relevant to you based on either your frequent activity or the people that are working closely to you and their frequent activity. At the bottom, you'll see sites that you're following. This is an explicit step, and when you go to a site, whether it's on the mobile app, whether you're on the web, you can choose to follow the site, which will do a number of things for the Microsoft Graph. It'll inform the graph that you have more interest in that site, and obviously just from a getting there perspective, you'll be able to navigate to it because it'll be in your following list, and you'll know where that is. This can be a mixture of sites. This could be a list of team sites, communication sites, sites that are connected to groups like we have in Office 365, or if they were coming from on-premises, or if they were existing sites, classic sites, then you would see those in the list. So this is a holistic view of all the sites around you that you're active in or following, on-premises or online, if you're mixing the two environments from an app perspective. So I'll go into a couple of sites in just a second. I'm just going to give a quick walkthrough of the main tabs. And I think I glanced over and saw one question or curiosity. What I'm demoing on today is a Samsung Tab 3. So this is using the SharePoint mobile app for Android, the same build for Android phones and Android tablets. I just happen to be on a tablet today. So if I go into a next site-related tab, what you're seeing here is a site of links that are programmed by your IT or your central marketing group or whomever manages that SharePoint homepage. In the bottom left, there are a set of links that are then available to everybody. So whatever somebody puts there for the whole company will come through and appear here from a mobile perspective as links to things that are broader for everybody type properties. So this might be where you've got your broader hub sites when they launch next year, or this could be where you've got your company portal. At Microsoft, we have the Microsoft Web, we have our Enterprise Search Center, we've got a link to go, and if you need to talk to somebody in HR or in the legal department, those are some of the main sites that we have here. You can certainly infer some of the main sites that everybody in your company goes to, and that's really what this Links tab is all about, getting you to those things that are available for everybody. And oftentimes these are broader portals, and again, that we support the ability to link to a custom portal that's running in SharePoint Online or SharePoint on premises will render it just fine here, even if you're leveraging the publishing infrastructure using master pages. The next pivot over to the right, I just tapped on the People's tab, and so this is where I'm going to see all the people that I'm working with. And so it's really a list of who's most relevant to me at this point in time. So I recently worked with CJ on a few projects, and we've been pretty active sharing content, working in the same team site. Maybe we're closely related to other people that we're active with. And as you go into somebody's people card, you can see a little bit more about them. You can see how to contact them. So from the mobile app, it's a great way to search and find for people, either to discover them, like I just did with somebody I work with relevantly, or if I go do a full broad search, I will find somebody, and it's the quickest way for me to be able to find somebody in my company and, of course, reach out to them. I can see who they work with, so this is a pivot of the graph within the SharePoint app. So from a perspective of who she works with, I can see who her manager is and who works for CJ. But under that, I can see people that actually work with her, not just from a hierarchy perspective. And then finally, again, with the Microsoft Graph, I can see what CJ's working on that we have in common. So one thing to remember here, and it's true throughout Office 365, if you're presented with material that's relevant to you based on what other people are doing, you won't see it if you don't have permissions to that document. So this is all of the content that CJ's working on that I have access to. She's either shared it with me, it's in a common team space that we work on with a set of files that we're both members or have access to. So I won't see anything that she hasn't shared with me if it's secret in her OneDrive for Business. I won't see it if it's a part of a private team site that I don't belong to. But certainly through the SharePoint mobile app, it's a great way to find content through people that you know, or in this case, people that are relevant to you, that I want to see what's CJ been working on most recently, and because we're active and working together, a lot of her content will be relative to me. So through the People tab, I really get a great glance at who am I working with and what can I learn through them. And especially at a glance, you can learn a lot about somebody in their People card. Now, on the very far right, you'll see what we now call the Me tab. And the Me tab has a lot that it provides to you from a relevance perspective, but also a time saver. This is where I would go and get right back to the content that I'm working on. And you can see in the upper left, right under where the drop down says Show All, is the deck that I uploaded that we were just looking at. So that I put into this tenant in a team site and then showed it through the PowerPoint mobile. But you can see that's the most recent thing that I've done today. And going back in time, you can see all the documents that I've connected with. If I had created a news article, you would see that coming through here. And it's just really the most recent activity for me. And you can see that I can pivot on things. If I want to see all items, if I wanted to see just news, I could see all the news that I've created. I can pivot down and quickly get back to that thing that I'm looking at, especially if there was something like, oh, I know I added a new list item to that list that somebody requested I submit to, and I want to get back to that. This is a way to go through your activities through the Me tab and get right to where you need to go. Second pivot in the Me tab is if I had saved something. So this is an explicit action, and I'll go back into Recent and pivot into All, and I'll find an item and I'll do it for the document that I was just working on. If I touch on the ellipses, that vertical ellipses, you'll see that I have a number of things that I can do, obviously, with the content. I can share it, I can check for further details, but right in the middle there is something that we call Save for Later, which is going to be basically put a bookmark on that content. You'll see a little blue bookmark now appear on that document. And if I go back to Save, you'll see that it's right there on the list of things that I've saved for later. So if you get a news article and you've got 5 minutes before the train comes, you can read a little bit. If you didn't finish, you can click Save for Later. Whether you lose connectivity or you just gain time somewhere down the line and then you find another 5 minutes, you can quickly get to that. When you're done with it, I'll go and do this on the second item. I can then remove it. I can also share from here, which is a strong action. But once I'm done reading it, I can click Remove from Saved, and it's going to take it out of my view, and then I'm on to the next, or on to my next meeting. So last thing in the Me tab is the ability for you to get to your own profile. And this might seem a little bit silly, but one of the things that's helpful, not just to learn about other people through other people, but is just to also see that pivot of, hey, I want to send a quick email to my manager. I want to, work with some of the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis, but on a relevant basis, I can see who my peers are that I'm working with, and I can quickly jump. And if I forgot somebody's name or I didn't know how to spell their last name because I was providing that information to somebody, I could do a quick lookup through me to see those relevant people, and of course, that larger, deeper pivot of what it is that I'm working on. So getting to your own profile certainly is a nice little gem of the Me tab. And the Me tab, since it's all about you, we certainly want to make sure that you can get to your information. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to jump over now and just kind of walk through top level what you get when you click on the News tab. We talked about news a little bit contextually. News, of course, is something that you can create at the team site level. You can create news in a communication site. With a hub site, all of that news will roll up, so you would get news rolling up to the hub site when we ship those early part of next year. And then there are two pivots on where you see an aggregate of all the news around you. The first one I'll show you when we hop out of the mobile app, but when you go to the SharePoint Home in Office 365, there's also a news web part at the very top. And that is aggregated news coming from all the sites that you're active in. It's showing you news from people that you're closely related to or relevant with. And you're seeing news also based a little bit on hierarchy. If your manager were to publish news or anybody above that, you would also see that news flow through. So it's an aggregate of all the news happening around you. Again, whether it's collaborative type news, if it's communicative and broader based type news, as an end user you'll see it, and this is the news that's relevant to you, again, while you're on the go. So I created a pretty basic one here just to get one to click into, and I'll show you more. But this is essentially now looking at the full news article that I published earlier that's got a header graphic and a title. Then it's got a little bit of text. It's got all the graphics that I've been publishing through the blog and Twitter recently for SharePoint Mobile. And on the right-hand side, I'm using the Twitter web part to just show the SharePoint feed as well. So a little recursive, little meta point here with the call out for the webinar. But you get it. I have the ability to access this news. It looks great. It's intended to look this way. And if I were on a smaller device, or you'll see I'm going to rotate my device, you'll see how it reflows. So the mobile app not only is responsive to how I turn my device, but if I had a smaller screen, it would pivot down. So now it's just one column, even though I originally designed it to be side by side, that section with the pictures and the Twitter feed. But you see how the SharePoint app reflowed it, and you get a little bit bigger of a view actually because it's on a tablet, where the tweets look pretty good, pretty nice. But again, if I was on a 4-inch iPhone, a 6-inch Windows phone, this would flow through and I would have a really nice experience. And again, you'll see that ability for me to bookmark it later. We want to do that and make that a consistent action that you can get to. And then if you needed to, you can refresh. You can edit the page if you own it, and you can open this in the browser. So just to note, that ability to edit the page is pretty new in terms of we just launched this, and currently today it's only in Android that you can edit the page, and you can do that after you publish. So that's relatively new. But it looks like I was hitting a little bit of error on the page. I'll try it one more time. I got it. So I'm learning some things with you. Looks like if you've got a multi-column news article, currently we're not able to edit that. So we'll work on that. Certainly we'll get there. But if I go back to news, I want to just make sure you see that this is news coming from a lot of different sites. The names of the sites are what you see in blue. So strategy and planning, travel innovation, Contoso family travel, and on down, and I just get a real plethora of news that's happening around me. And of course, sequentially, this is what's coming in. I'm going to come back and go a little bit deeper into a couple of sites, but just so I can show you notifications, I'm going to pause here for a second and jump over to a smaller device so you get a sense of what the SharePoint mobile app looks like on a smaller device. And let's clear out a few things and reconnect using this guy here. Give me 1 second. All right, so once this comes up, I'm now presenting from an Android LG G4, so a little bit of an older phone, but it's a nice one with a leather backing. I've got the SharePoint app loaded up, and hopefully this will come through here. Sometimes it takes 2 tries with Miracast, and just give it a second. All right, so this is my first Miracast failure point, so we'll cancel and close out of the Windows 10 app, and you get a good shot of Mount Rainier, and here comes Miracast one more time. This is one of those things that literally worked minutes ago, and it is my one point where I wanted to show you the new notifications features. All right, I know by the rule of thumb you're only supposed to try it twice, but hang in there with me if you don't mind, and we will try that again. One last time. All right, that's ready. All right, so we are going to default over to our friend and show you what notifications should be looking like if I was able to connect. I'll try that once more later in the broadcast if we've got a little bit of time. But basically over your lock screen, and of course once you're in your phone, you're able to see notifications come in, and you can see notifications here. I've got 4 that came through. This is Android on the left and iOS on the right. Both support on lock screen, and of course once you're unlocked and into your phone. This is just what it looks like on an iPhone if I was on screen lock, and this is if I were to unlock it. And what happens when I click on one of these news items is in an unlocked state, or after I unlock it, I tap into it and it takes me right into the SharePoint mobile app, and I'm able to go directly into the news article as a deep link. So notifications are something that we just launched. So if you haven't updated your SharePoint mobile app or you haven't installed it, I'll have links at the end. But I encourage you certainly to keep up to date with what the team is doing, because they are shipping a lot. And actually, I got it to work. So this do a little bit of retake. So if I slide from the top, I can see, same as that screenshot just showed, here are a number of different news articles. They're going to take me directly, when I tap into one, into the SharePoint mobile app. Oh, let's try another one. Good failure points. Hold on. All right, well, we're just going to load the one that was supposed to come up. Certainly the notification would take me right into van life. And if we have any people out there that are fans of Westphalias or VW buses, you can count me in as one of your friends. I'll be your friend anyway, even if you don't like vans. But you'll see that it comes through. It's a pretty simple article. But while I'm here, one of the things that I wanted to show you is now that we support the ability to comment on news. And so on this one, I'll just say vans rule to drive and wear on your feet. Post that down, and this will come as a post directly to the owner, and certainly anybody that's reading this news article would then be able to see this both in the mobile app and on the web. And if I came here and somebody else had a comment, you can see that I can add my own comment, but I could also reply to this comment, and I'll just recursively reply to myself. So we support comments. We certainly support the ability to then share. That's that other icon down here if I wanted to share this. And on whatever type of phone that you have and the apps that you have, you can always share the link via Outlook. You could post it into something like Microsoft Teams or into Yammer, or you could do an action like you see kind of in the middle on the 3rd row, where you could copy to the clipboard and use the link however you want. So we want to make sharing news, sharing pages, sharing sites super easy to do and super consistent. So let me switch back over, and now that we've got this one connect, actually let me stay here while we're connected, and I'll show you a little bit around search. So if I wanted to find somebody, I'm looking for my friend Jeff Teeper, and defaults to the files. But when I go and do an enterprise search, obviously for people, I found Jeff. There's Jeff. And I can learn a little bit about Jeff. I can see obviously what Jeff looks like if I didn't know that. I can see who he works with, what he's working on. Very similar to what we saw in the People's tab. And here you see that from a search perspective. But of course, from a search perspective, I can see all the files that Jeff has been working on, the different sites that Jeff works on. If he had published any news, I would see those come through here as well. And so I could tap into, read a PowerPoint. That would take me into PowerPoint Mobile. And of course, from a sites perspective, I can see different sites that either he's created or is a member of that I have access to. So for instance, if I wanted to go into the travel program site, I found that as a site of interest through Jeff, and this will take me to natively experience the travel program site, which at the top, again, if you were to look at this on the web, it would have our hero web part, which is a full bleed web part that typically has about 3 to 5 boxes of content. But when you're in mobile, it's more of a swipe left to right. So you can see the little number. It says 2 of 5, 3 of 5, 4 of 5, 5 of 5. So on a mobile phone, it reflows that hero web part into something that is more accessible, and of course takes up a lot of less space in a nice way. There's a nice news article that Jeff created. There's the events web part, and really anything that somebody had put on that home page, whether it was document related, whether it was events oriented, if they had put on a Power BI web part, a video from Office 365 Video or Microsoft Stream, those soon will be mobilized, and things like a Yammer web part will also be mobile accessible. So I'm going to jump out of this and stop Miracast and go back to the larger surface just so I can type a little bit. And we'll go a little bit deeper into team sites and communication sites. And just give me a second while I close out. And hopefully we'll have good luck getting back here. And just in about 1 or 2 more demos, I'll take a little pause and I'll just peruse to see what kind of questions we've got so that I can answer those if people can't stay to the end. But first I want to go into a team site. So I got to connect back up with this guy. Alright, so this should be coming through. And from the Sites tab, I clicked into the Travel Innovation site. And this is a group connected site, which means from a SharePoint perspective, this SharePoint team site is modern. So we have modern homepage, we've got modern document libraries, modern lists, modern experiences throughout. But we also natively render a lot of the content. So we have a pivot on site activities. Here are all the site activities. And you can see that I uploaded that PowerPoint deck. Randy had created a news article earlier. And on down the way, you can just see basically everything that's happening on the site. So through the SharePoint mobile app, I can see all the activity if I wanted to see what's going on, especially if it is something that I'm waiting for or hoping that somebody has created or published. I can go here and kind of keep up abreast of what's going on, especially if I want to jump the gun and wait before they send the email that notifies everybody. I can also go into files, and we really take that pivot of not just going right into all of your files right away as far as the document library, but these are all the recent files, and it's a nice pivot of being able to see what's the most current content, and then right below it is the ability to see popular files. These are files that have been shared a lot, viewed a lot, and again in context with everything that you have permissions to see and access. And at the bottom, I'll go in here in just a second, but if I really wanted to access this full document library, we have a tight integration with the OneDrive app that gives me access to then go through all my folders, through all the files, and especially go right to the place where I know it is. I'll do that in just a second. From a list perspective, if I go in, I can see that there's a single list on this site. It's called Paris Places to Visit. So let's see who created this list and what's that place that we all want to go visit today. Maybe we all go visit the Louvre, and then after that we'll grab a croissant, and then we'll visit the Eiffel Tower, and hopefully the line won't be too long where we can go to the top. So this is a pretty simple list. If I go into a list item, I can see that we support, of course, a dynamic nature to the different list field types. So some of these might have been drop-downs, radio buttons when you first initially filled it out. But the couple things to note here is when I go into a list and I'm on a list item, of course I have the ability to edit it. So if I wanted to, I can go in here and edit that. Once I'm done, we'll call it, there's plural, the Louvres, les Louvres. So we'll put it in French and save that down. So I've updated that list item. And now if I go back to the top level of the list, I can also create a new list item. So let's put in London through the Channel and save that down. And we're working on being able to fill out a lot more of the list item field types. This list is pretty simple, but if it were a radio drop down, I'd be able to select from those. So I can edit and add to lists as I go. I can create content, I can view it, and then from an overall site navigation, if I want to get to everything that's on this, I can go to the home page if I want to see that natively how it looks. So this will render it again from a mobile reflow perspective, but it'll load the main home page as you would intend it to see. That first view you get when you click into a team site is more of how we render things natively so you can get directly to the content. But if I was on the web, again, this is how we reflow it for mobile. You see that I've got my news web part, I've got my new group calendar web part that shows me all of the different meetings that are coming up. I can pivot so it's interactive if I wanted to see all the past meetings. And on down I can see the various documents and how this is using the new document web part. On the right hand side we're leveraging our highlighted content web part. And then down below that we're using the highlighted content web part again to section off specifically different material that has a relationship so that we can add it in context. So here are all the trip reports from Western Europe, the trip reports from East Asia. What's also coming through is our new planner web part. It's not out just yet, but it's coming soon. If I have a group connected team site and I'm leveraging Planner, now you can, through the team site, add the Planner web part. And this is what it looks like from a task, how many tasks have been completed perspective, but there's a few pivots to the Planner web part. But again, this is what it looks like when it comes through. We also support now the Microsoft Forms. So if you had created a form, I could fill it out here as an end user, and once I submit it, I can see what are the results, and that's essentially what you're seeing here. Down at the bottom, I can use against various different web parts, and I'll point out here again from a people perspective, if I tapped on Jeremy's face here, I'd be able to get to his people card, and that is not launching for me, so I'm going to move on. And then down at the bottom you can see that you can see information coming from, because this is a team site, we're starting to leverage and showcase some of the new connector web parts. So this is the Facebook connector web part. We're seeing a nice conversation flow through here. And on down the way you can see that I can get to my home page and access it in a robust way. But if I want to go right to the content, this is my best way to get to the content itself. Last thing I'm going to show you from a team site perspective is the news tab. So here's news that's just happening within this team site. And the nice thing that we can do now is we can create news while we're on the go. So this is, again, on an Android tablet. I can do this on an Android phone, iOS, iPhone, and an iPad. And I'm just going to go here and say, hello, mobile world. And then I'm going to add in a document. This should be able to give me a quick, easy access to add the document that I was showing you earlier, so that I'll pull it down and leverage the PowerPoint online. At the top here, I want to add two of my friends that are helping me this morning, and I'll cue them up and say, hey guys, come over and help me. And I'll let this take a photo, and just give me a second here to put my friends. Do you guys know Monty and his friend SharePoint Monkey? Let's get them here and say OK. And this will come back in a second. So now we've got SharePoint Monkey and his friend Monty are in the house. SP. One second. And then finally, of course, you can add text. And we'll do this pretty quickly to save a little bit of time. So I've added what I wanted to. I've maybe written out, I was on site and I took a picture of a broken pipe, and I wanted to let my team know that I found the problem and I'm issuing a request to have a new pipe of a certain size sent out. If I needed to have that validated, I could add a picture so somebody else could review it. A lot of different scenarios you can do creating news on the go, especially to share things that are very important and relevant to those people that work with you. I'll click publish, and this will now essentially create a new news article within this team site. Anybody who's a member, you see there's 16 members of this team site. They would all see this on their SharePoint homepage, but more importantly, they would see it, and you won't see it right away, but on their news tab in the SharePoint mobile app, they would of course see that news flow through. So that news service is certainly pervasive. If it's a very targeted news article, like on a team site, then it would of course appear for the team. If it's more broad, like where I'm going to go next, which is to go into a communication site. So this is the Contoso Adventure Travel Program site, And like I had mentioned, this is the hero web part at the top. So on the 4-inch device that I showed you earlier, this was pivoted down to be a swipe left to right. But because we have a little bit of real estate on a 10-inch tablet, you can see that we see it in its full original size. And this is the same in terms of some of the web parts. We've got a news web part. We've got an events web part that shows a little bit more, again, because we have a little bit more real estate to work with. And then from a documents perspective, if you see I've got 3 pivots, I can swipe left or right. But also in the SharePoint mobile app, you have the ability to go in one level deep to see all. So this is me now going in and seeing all the files that meet some criteria that's been programmed into this web part. And it could just be show all files, or it could be show all files of a certain type with a certain keyword, and that's just using the search through the graph technology. But like I showed you with that home page, you can go in and you can go into the various subpages. So going into the menu, I click into now a page of this site, and this is just a pretty simple page where we travel. It's got its own header. Scroll down, you'll see that it's got a couple of different layouts and a few other different web parts, a different way to lay out the text that we maintain and make look great here. We support tables. We of course support full bleed images. If you've got an image gallery, I can swipe through them. This will come through image 2 of 5, image 3 of 5, swiping left to right. And then down below, even some of the things like this map that you see where it says Reykjavik, I can go in and interact with this one. If I wanted to see an aerial view of Reykjavik, I could do that, and it's even something that I could pinch and zoom whatever device I'm on. And so you can see that a lot of our web parts are interactive with data or interactive with maps, giving that ability to present first what you want to the user, and then of course for them to be able to pivot and go into what it is they're most interested in. So this is a pretty detailed page, looks great. I have the ability to, again, bookmark it if I wanted to share it with other people. And again, if I pivot this, you'll see how we reflow it and do all of that mobile work for you in terms of if you have ever built responsive design into a site. It's usually a bit of the end cost to building out a site, and certainly it's something that can be a little tricky in how you do it. But the maps have gotten bigger. We've now moved into a single column, and it looks great. So let me go back, and I'll get into one of the last things that I wanted to show you in terms of the mobile app itself is if I go into in the settings of the app. There's of course a number of things that you can do. You can see which account am I signed into. I can turn on and off the push notifications. There's a way to provide feedback directly to the team. The team's very responsive if you put anything in user voice. If you tweet out to the SharePoint handle, certainly with any feedback or screenshots that you wanted to share, whether that's a pro or a con, we're here to listen, get your feedback. And of course you can rate the app like you would expect. But the really thing that I wanted to show you here is if you wanted to add another account. Right now you'll see Mark at contosodemosg.onmicrosoft.com. That's a SharePoint Online Office 365 ID. But if I go in here and I want to add another account, or it's the only account that I want to add, you'll see here it says enter your work or school account you use for SharePoint Online. But note the link that's about 2/3 of the way down the page where it says sign in with a SharePoint server URL. The context changes, and now if you've got the URL for your SharePoint on-premises site, and of course credentials to be able to then log in, you just type that in. It'll take you to the server, you log in, and then it'll take you back to the SharePoint app, and there you have access to all of your sites and content. Now, bear in mind when you're on SharePoint on-premises today, a lot of those sites are existing team sites using some of the classic approach to the user interface. And we render that via HTML right inside the app, giving you full access to the site itself. And as you navigate into a list or a document library, especially with SharePoint 2013 and 2016, there's some mobile work that we did within an HTML realm where those look great on mobile. They're a lot more finger friendly, especially on a smaller device. But certainly we render you the full site, give you access to it, and as much as you built onto the site, you'll be able to navigate to it. Even a custom portal that your company has built to be able to then access it. And if they've built mobile responsive design into it, of course we will reflow that as best we can through the HTML rendering on that custom portal. But anyway, after you enter that, it would take you in to your site, and then of course you'll be able to navigate and access all of your content. Last thing I'll say is if you log into a SharePoint on-premises site and a SharePoint online site and you do a search, you're actually doing a hybrid search. So from a SharePoint mobile app, you certainly will be able to find content no matter where it lives. And that's a pretty strong offering in terms of, especially if an end user doesn't really think in terms of where is this content that was shared with me, or I need to find something and I only want to go look in one place. No, you want to look everywhere. So we certainly support that. So that's how you log in and access that. Let me switch back over into PowerPoint, and I just want to quickly do a quick review and then get to questions. So we'll put this in view mode. So you already saw notifications because we had to default to that for a little bit, but certainly we support notifications on iPhone and Android, or sorry, iOS and Android. We have the new Me tab that gives you the ability to access your recent and saved content and access your own profile. Any content, a document, a news article, a page, you can save for later, and you'll see that within the Me tab. You can comment on news and pages, so if somebody had created a page that was a part of a site, you could go and leave native comments there on the page or within the news article through the SharePoint mobile app. If you want to create or read news, of course you go to the News tab. To read news, you click into the news like I showed you, and if you wanted to create news, you can go and do that while you're on the go, add text, images, and documents, and of course if you need to later on the web, you can go in and update that news article to add additional web parts, to create a different layout, to refine your post if you want to have that something as an action to do later. From a search perspective, just so you can see it across a couple of different devices, you can search on sites, and this is just what it looks like across different devices, and on the right is what it looks like on an iPad. But certainly with enterprise search, you can search for sites, content, and people, and further refine and filter down the results to get to what you want. And then that we support SharePoint Online, Login, and SharePoint On-Premises for both SharePoint Server 2013 and SharePoint Server 2016. I'm going to leave this up as I address some questions, but if you don't have the Android, iOS, or Windows installed today, I encourage you to go out to the store. These are easy links that you can type into your phone, and it'll take you right to the place to install them. And if you've installed them, I encourage you to go and make sure you're up to date so you've got the latest features. To date, since we launched the SharePoint mobile apps a little over a year ago, the team has released about 30 to 35 updates across the applications. And those are not just little minor tweaks, polishes. Those are new features, new functionality. Some, of course, were table stakes that we wanted to make sure we had, and we just had time to get to them. Some of them are new, important features that weren't just refinements or polish additives, like the Me tab, notifications, and certainly a lot of the experience across team sites and communication sites, with more to come. So I encourage you, if you're a part of Office 365, your day-to-day, and you don't have the SharePoint mobile app, install it today, update it today, certainly give it a try to see what it gives you access to and how it can support your productivity on the go. So I'll leave that up just so you can see for installing it. Let me just kind of start from the bottom up. We'll definitely have a recording that I'll post later, and I'll get that out soon, so no worries there. The COM site looks great. I guess the site opens the home page instead of multiple tabs in the team site. It's a little bit different in terms of the first experience. When you go to a communication site, the primary goal is that what you see on the home page is the main content that people are trying to promote. And certainly they design that to be for a few people to design the homepage and a lot of then people to consume it. So we do default to being able to see the homepage. With a team site, a collaborative space, we expect that a lot of the content is very active, and there certainly may be a homepage experience, but for you on the go, we want to default to get you right to the content. You can get to the homepage. And I know one question that came in via Twitter is, can you program that experience? I believe Brent asked that question. And so today the answer is no, in terms of being able to program that first run experience when somebody goes into the site. From a communication site, yes, you of course design the home page and that's what will load when you go into it. For a team site today, the answer is no, and we certainly take that as feedback. I appreciate you sending that via Twitter. Yeah, and I think, Brett, you just reiterated same thing here. So let me move up a little bit. A little question, I think, around notifications. So the way that the notification service works today, to kind of, I hope, answer the question, is if somebody who's closely related to me, according to the Microsoft graph, those are people that I work with closely, are active in team sites, have shared content with, or have been shared content from, the graph knows who is most relevant to me, and it kind of checks that on a daily basis. If I change roles, if I change organizations, if I change a project from a project perspective, those people then, those relations to me are going to be the people that influence the content that I see. And from a news perspective, those are the notifications that I'm going to get. And then we have a couple of explicit signals, which are people that you report under or who are your peers. You will see their news as well, and you will get notified of them. You, of course, can go into a site and see all the news, or at the parent level of the SharePoint mobile app, you'll see all the news that's happening around you. So you would certainly be able to see news from a couple of different pivots. But from a notification perspective, hopefully that's clear on which notifications you would expect to see. Looks like a question around the SharePoint survey list. There are a couple of list types that we're still working on so that they have a mobile optimization to them. And if you were asking about Microsoft Forms, that team is working to make the Microsoft Forms web part available when you're in a mobile perspective. So there are a few web parts that we have out there today in production that don't yet have a mobile aspect, but that's coming. But we just cleared out one of the important ones, the Yammer web part when we first shipped it, wasn't mobile ready. Certainly worked great on the web and was great to have that conversation in context with your content or your site. And now it's available to access through the mobile. And there are a number of web parts, about 2 or 3, that have that work still to come, and I know the teams are working on them, so that should be clearing soon. Can the mobile app work in a hybrid environment? Absolutely. So I showed you a little bit on how to sign into SharePoint Online, SharePoint On Premises. When you're signed into both, you effectively have the app in a hybrid state so that you can access your various sites across domains, and of course the content that sits in those sites, those document libraries, wherever you have it stored, is available. And if you've also entered the ability for your tenant to have hybrid search, beyond accessing the sites explicitly, if you're going to look for something, the enterprise search capability from the SharePoint mobile app works against your unified index. So if you've established hybrid search, you have a unified index, and that's what we're searching against. So if I do an explicit search and I look for something, the result set might be content from across on-premises and online. So absolutely, hybrid's very important to the work that we're doing based on feedback and certainly deployment realities of what our customers are telling us. The news I see in the mobile app doesn't match the news I see when I go to the SharePoint home. That should be pretty close. Be interested to know how off it is. Some of it is from a timing perspective when it gets released through the different service endpoints. But it should be a very similar list in terms of the news tab on mobile is a pivot of the news that's relevant to you based on sites that you're active in and people you're active with. And that SharePoint home operates the same. I've seen sometimes a little delay of news coming to the SharePoint home news web part, if that's the issue. But if it's a very different set, we certainly would love to hear a little feedback, and I can check in to see if I'm telling you the right thing in terms of what algorithm, if they're the same, and what you should expect to see there. And if not, I'd love to find out why and provide that information to you. So there is, when will we get the aggregated news web part that can be placed on a corporate home page? Part of that question is, can I use a modern web part on a classic page? And that's true for team sites. From a custom perspective, to be able to build out a custom page to then consume modern web parts is not something we yet support for custom portals. But certainly the service itself, to be able to create your own web part, that would be a pretty simple web part to be able to then pull in and aggregate news content. That is something that certainly is what our web part is doing, and there wouldn't be anything stopping you from being able to access the content and to be able to display it through your own. I know it's not exactly what you're asking or what you would like, but that would be the today state. And certainly one of the things we talked about at Ignite was our want in 2018 as a top of mind item to create more of a corporate news offering. And I won't go too far into really the aspects of that, but obviously some of that is to be able to have content that's created and pushed down versus that roll-up of news aggregation. Not so much of a different answer to you, Brent, in terms of your question, but something that top of mind is how can we better offer corporate news from across the organization perspective. Those links are set on the SharePoint. Oh, somebody was answering somebody's question. If you're asking how do the links appear in the links tab, those are done by an administrator at the admin level. Usually it's the IT department or somebody in the central marketing group, and they just go onto the page directly. If you have access, you'll see an edit button. So you can adjust a link or add a new link, and then it's available for everybody and flows through the SharePoint mobile app. I think a question that was reiterated from the one that was asked in Twitter, can we set our intranet homepage as the landing page on the mobile app? Not today. The starting point when you first launch it cold is the sites pivot. And certainly both from Twitter and the question here today, I'll take that as feedback to the team that you would want to have a little bit more control, not so much from a branding perspective, but from an experience perspective. Not that you wouldn't want branding as well, but that's an area we're working on from a theming and branding perspective. But to have that first run experience be something that you control what the user lands on. Like you think of a company intranet today. If you type in Microsoft.sharepoint.com, for me as an end user here working at Microsoft, my expectation is I land somewhere. With Office 365, we certainly give you those choices outside of these apps to go to a specific home page. And it's interesting feedback so that we can start you on a preferred location, even if that's something that's programmed for you. Would be really nice to have a featured corporate option, or so. Okay, sorry, this is about the same one. And then I think we're close to the top. I heard that news from featured sites might also show in alerts, but would like confirmation. We don't have the ability today to feature news, but certainly from sites that you're most active in, or sites that have people that you're most closely working with and they're active in, that would control the news. One of the things that what I mentioned earlier around corporate news is we want to give you that ability to feature news, which of course would influence, and I don't know the final design, but if I featured a news article on a hub site, or I featured a news article at a communication site, and I wanted everybody to see that and almost to the point where they couldn't not see it. Those are some of the things that we're thinking through. And of course, if that was the case, once corporate news is in the news service mix, you would of course expect that some of those top level news items that are being pushed to everybody would then of course flow through and be featured, and of course would be probably your first notification would be an alert, a news notification. So does everyone that has access to the site get the alert, or only the people Microsoft Machine Learning thinks are relevant to receive it? We first pivot on trying to send you not an overload of alerts. So we certainly first pivot on relevant people and relevant activity. So if you're active in a site recently and somebody's been publishing news on that particular site, you would see that more of a heavier weight than if you just happen to belong to a site but you haven't visited it and nobody that's really closely related to you as far as activity. So we pivot across that, and certainly you will see us fine-tuning based on feedback how alerts and notifications work. And as we move beyond alerts just for news, you'll certainly get a pivot on a lot of activities that are happening around you that we want to call your attention to on your behalf, but certainly not overload you. We're getting started with the news service. We'll learn a lot in terms of what's too much, what's too little. You can always navigate in and find exactly what you're looking for, but from alerts perspective, we err on a few pivots that I've mentioned in terms of what news you would expect to see, and we'll fine-tune that based on both implicit and explicit experience things that people have shared with us. The question that relates to above that is, if our CEO posts a news update, would all employees get the push notification? The assumption would be yes, because of hierarchy, but not necessarily because of the feature that I've been mentioning that we're working on to bring next year, which is that top-down push notifications of news for everybody. But certainly in relation to everybody hierarchically reports under them, if you're a number of clicks away from the CEO right now, that wouldn't necessarily a one to everybody. But it's certainly feedback we have in terms of as we think about the corporate news feature, we expect that there will be a lot of top-down scenarios, and that would be where we would support that more inherently. I'll read one more question. We're at time, and I want to make sure that I give you back, that if you've stayed for the whole hour, I want to make sure that you get back to being productive. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all the questions. I will certainly answer any that I didn't get to out on Twitter. I'll try to summarize the question and then put an answer just as a Q and an A. So certainly I'll leave this open for a little bit. If you have any final questions, feel free to ask them, and I'll get back to them as soon as I can via Twitter. But I'll just read the very last one, and then we'll close out here. It's a longer one. So it says, Mark, I have a question. When we get such notification capabilities on a classic experience, and so a lot of the things that pivot around, is this capability available to me on my existing team site? Some of the answer is no, because with a modern home page brings some of the modern tooling in terms of web parts, in terms of how I can access site information, add members and whatnot, that are pivot off of some of the modern tech that's both behind the scenes and the front on the home page. But specifically, if I wanted to use the news web part on a classic page today, the way that you would do that, Mahendran, is that you would basically create the page as a new page in your classic team site today, using the modern page layouts, modern web parts. You design the page however you want. Once you've done that, you go into that pages library that's easily accessible through the site contents page, click into your pages library, choose the page that you just created that you want to make your home page, and you right click on it, and then there's an option that says make this the home page. So as long as you've got a modern home page, you then have the ability to put in whatever available web part that's there for modern pages. News web part, events web part, the Twitter web part soon, things like team site collaboration with Planner and the groups calendar, and on and on. There's lots and lots of web parts. You'll be able to design a home page as you want, even if it's not connected to an Office 365 group, by creating a modern page and deeming it your home page. So hopefully that is a little bit of a workaround, but certainly off of that, then anything that happens in those web parts would come through as notifications. A new news article has been created. When we get further down the alerting system, other activity within the site certainly will go as a push notification. But for today, you would have to create the home page for the classic site and deem it your new home page. Last thing I'll tease is we're also working on the ability to connect an existing SharePoint team site to a new Office 365 group. And certainly once you do that and you bring your site forward into a more modern experience, then you're right at the level of everything that I've been talking about today. So it's a great question. There certainly is a lot of benefits moving into a modern space, getting additional access to the different apps of the group. But from a SharePoint perspective, really the focus is to modernize the document library, to modernize lists, to modernize the home page. And when you do that, you can access a lot of that today. And certainly when we enable the feature to connect to a new Office 365 group, you'll get that for free. So I'll close out there and appreciate your time. Have a great rest of the day. And if it's a short day today or tomorrow, getting ready to travel if you're in the United States for Thanksgiving, or if you're outside the United States, hope you have a wonderful rest of the week and a great weekend. Thanks for your time, and I'll make sure to post both the deck and the video if you weren't able to stay for the whole time, or sorry, if you wanted to share this with other people that couldn't make it. So again, thanks for your time and have a great day.